talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. There's a lot of concern in the industry about the administration's proposal to raise SBA 7A and I assume 504 fees. Listen to this exchange Chuck Evans of Capital Growth Solutions and I had.
I want to talk about the budget. This is my thought. I've done some research. I personally do not see the fees increasing. However, I have several caveats. The problem is the capital access model at SBA is showing a $100 million profit to the Treasury, but SBA CFO is saying, no, that's not quite true. We're going to have, anyway, I've talked to the Senate. I've talked to SBA. I don't see that happening, but I want to give this huge caveat. Please, please, please. Anytime you close a loan, get out there, take your iPhone, do a little video, and be sure invite your two senators, your local congressperson, and let them know that this is a new small business and they're employing people. Chuck, you are a loan service provider. What are you telling your banks to do to market SBA to Congress?
The purpose of this is better access to capital. And the purpose of raising the fees, in my humble opinion, is going to do just the opposite.
Right.
I know Congress is concerned about the record levels of lending, and so they rightfully should give Susan Strike much more ammunition in policing the lenders. I'm for that 110%. But when you start charging these additional fees and the small business applicant indirectly or directly is going to have to pay them, it's going to cut down on this lending. And then we're going to go back to the recessionary times and have problems again.
Chuck, I had a conversation with the staff director of a Democratic Congress person. We don't care who the name is. She said, well, we're having a problem in our state with a franchise and loan losses. We want to know what this is going to cost the taxpayer. And I had to patiently explain to her, this is zero subsidy. And she was shocked about it. And she did not know that this is no cost. And this is why the problem is every year you get these, I hire millennials. I have kids who are millennials. So I could say this and get away with it. They hire these millennials who don't know anything, and we have to educate them as an industry of what the program is about. And once I told her this was zero subsidy, her entire attitude changed. So please, please send them, invite them to the closing, get the pictures with the ribbon, go to Washington, D.C. They'd love to hear the story about how capitalists employ employees. And they want to hear that story, and don't minimize that. I've been Chuck. You and I have been in this business for a long time, and you got to hit the pavement and hit these offices and tell the story. And even if they don't show up, that's okay. At least you're sending them letters. Say, hey, we're opening up a Subway. They're going to employ 12 people. It's at this place. We're going to do this ABC manufacturing. And that gets SBA the radar. Look, Chuck, SBA is 0.02% of the federal budget.
And Bob, this needs to be a grassroots effort. I know friends at the agency, the congressmen, they don't know about this. They don't know it's zero subsidy. We assume that they do in their position in power, but they don't. And until we, each one of us, you, me, and everyone on the call, start reaching out to the legislators, we could get in trouble if these fees go into place.
Yeah,
so it's grassroots effort we have to do.
And I told the staff director, I said, look, this program is paid by two things. The borrower pays that guarantee fee, and the bank pays an annual servicing fee, and that covers the loan losses. I said, lending is risky. There's supposed to be losses. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox, and we're going to go on to the rest of the program. But I believe, my personal opinion is, we're not going to have increases in fees. It's not going to happen. Cooler heads will prevail. But that does not mean we cannot, as Chuck said, ignore the grassroots effort.
As I've said, I have a cool gig. I get to talk to bank bankers, lenders, Main Street entrepreneurs all across the country, and I got to go to Puerto Rico. I talked to Yvette Collazo with SBA, Region 2 SBA Administrator Steve Bulger. Listen to the nice conversation we had in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We're in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Steve Bulger, Region 2 Regional Administrator, SBA. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Yvette Collazo,
Yes.
District Director of Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands.
Yes.
We're at the Puerto Rican Investment Summit. Hurricane Maria devastated the island. What was the impact on Puerto Rican small business Main Street?
It was a huge impact to businesses in Puerto Rico. I think that it was probably the biggest challenge that has been given to Puerto Rico. Many businesses suffered through it. Our mission in SBA was really to try to aid them in, trying to rise again and try to get their business back on track.
Steve, you were saying earlier at your keynote speech, the greatest natural disaster in the United States?
Right. At a meeting last year here in Puerto Rico, the FEMA administrator, local administrator, told us that FEMA now considers Hurricane Maria to be the single worst disaster in our nation's history. Primarily because not only was 100% of the electrical grid damaged or destroyed.
I can't believe that number. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not 100%. It's a pretty big number.
It's a pretty big number. Yeah. But what really set it apart was also 100% of the communications grid, which made it so difficult to communicate, as Yvette was on the front lines of that, trying to communicate across the island and get help to where it was needed.
Tell me about the recovery efforts. How long has it been? Now, we're filming this first week of March 2019.
Sure.
How long has the recovery effort been going on?
Sure. Really, Yvette and her team, they were there the next day trying to get the resources, starting to get the project together, to get the resources out to everyone. So it's been about 18 months now since Hurricane Maria, and we have, the SBA has approved over 56,000 disaster assistance loans to small businesses and individuals, and that total dollar volume is about $2 billion worth of loans.
Are you through?
No, we still have over 100 SBA disaster assistance team members spread out at 28 locations across the island, and our administrator, Linda McMahon, has indicated they're going to stay as long as they're needed to help the residents of Puerto Rico.
You're working, this is a summit with both SBA and USDA. Tell us about your partnership with USDA.
Sure. Last year, Administrator McMahon and Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue signed a memorandum of understanding to have our two agencies work together to make sure we were bringing as many resources and assistance programs to our rural areas of the country. And here in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of rural areas. And so we are very happy to be here to forward that mission of cooperation with the USDA.
Yvette, why are you and your team here at this summit? What do you want to accomplish for Puerto Rico and your constituents?
We want to make sure that we continue to work collaboratively with other agencies and to benefit the small businesses in Puerto Rico. Like Steve mentioned, we had a huge challenge when all this happened, and a lot has been done, but there's still a lot to be done. So,
last question. We talk about capital to access to underserved markets.
Right.
I assume Puerto Rico's an underserved market. What is SBA doing to address that need?
Sure. Well, as part of this MOU with the USDA, the SBA has actually lowered our fees for our rural and historically underutilized business zone areas, which is, working with our lenders, that is a big help in trying to get the financial resources flowing to the areas where it's needed the most.
Steve, Yvette, thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
All right.
Continuing with our Puerto Rican theme, down there they call them secretaries. These are their cabinet officials. Manuel LeBoy and I talked about Puerto Rican Main Street recovery after the devastating hurricanes. Manuel Lavoy, the keynote speaker, Puerto Rican Investment Summit. I grabbed you right before you're going on. What are you going to talk about?
Well, the message is very straightforward. Puerto Rico is open for business. This is a great time to invest in Puerto Rico, and we want everybody to be part of that transformation, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're transforming the economy, we're transforming the infrastructure, and we want to create good jobs and promote investment in the island.
Tell me about the state of Puerto Rican Main Street. How's small business doing today?
I think that when you look at the profile of small and medium enterprises, certainly, we've been going through some tough times over the last 10, 12 years. And of course, after the hurricanes, the situation got a little more challenging. Despite of that, I think that we're very optimistic, we're very confident, because we are living in an unprecedented time of the history of the island, where we're going to have a lot of capital coming from the disaster recovery funds from the federal government. Puerto Rico, it's basically designated the whole island as an opportunity zone by the U.S. Treasury.
Right.
Plus, we have a number of programs. We are basically investing in infrastructure, trying to make Puerto Rico more competitive, and I think that all of those things will have a great impact to the small and medium enterprises in the island. And we're also focusing on some key sectors like tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, technology, that we know that is going to be very beneficial for small and medium enterprises in the island.
Manuel, my listeners are SBA lenders, USDA, B&I lenders, community facilities lenders. How important are those programs?
Well, access to capital and technical assistance, both, are very, very important at this stage where we are. Because again, we want to grow the economy, we want to create good jobs, and certainly it's important to bring big companies, but the basic and the basis of our plan is also to support small and medium enterprises. Not only the local ones, which are probably, the priority, but also we want to welcome small and medium enterprises for the U.S. mainland and other places that can come to Puerto Rico and use Puerto Rico as a platform to export goods and services. So certainly, SBA and rural development programs, along other programs, are very important, because again, access to capital and the technical assistance necessary so these businesses can grow, and they can grow in a sustainable manner, is very critical for the plans that we have for Puerto Rico.
Very good. I love those answers. I got to ask you this question though. My knowledge of Puerto Rican government is poor, as is probably 98% of my listeners. What does the secretary do?
Well, my job is to bring new investment to Puerto Rico, new businesses, to support and grow local businesses in the island so they can export with the ultimate goal of exporting, and of course implementing the necessary reforms so Puerto Rico is more competitive, that we can have a good place to invest, improve the business climate and the ease of doing business. In a nutshell, those are the three things that I do.
Thanks for stopping by.
No problem. Thank you.
Finally, as you know, Coleman does niche vertical webinars. We did one on veterinary services. Listen to this.
This is why I'm bullish on this sector. Number one, I'm going to give you the stats. There's a reason why Live Oak Bank started their lending program dealing with veterinarians and dentists. Excellent track record. There's excellent repayment sources. If there's a problem, that professional can go get a job somewhere else, no different than any other medical doctor. There are high capital needs by these small business owners, therefore for equipment as well as for real estate. And I always like to throw this in. I call it Amazon proof. I don't think Amazon knows how to compete with your Main Street veterinarian, at least yet. But as always, there's traps. Very much consider life insurance. These practices have won maybe a couple of professionals. If that professional dies, you want to be protected. Now, I do know that we're in a business and we want to be streamlined, so we'll go through the collateral issues. But basically, if there's a shortfall, you need to have life insurance. A prudent lender may want to do that anyway. Obviously, heavy regulatory compliance is required by these small business owners. Very high labor cost. I did not know this, but of course it makes sense. There are geographical and seasonal concerns. During the summer months, there are more vet issues than there are during the winter. I didn't know that. And obviously, if you're in rural America, that's important. And this is definitely dependent on the economy. So the revenues are going to track how the economy is doing. If the economy is rocking and rolling, this sector will do very well. That's why it has an amazing track record in the past 10 years. And this is now standard pro forma on why we get into trouble, but I always like to reinforce it. I think it's important. Number one reason is we're not documenting equity injection on a business acquisition or a startup. We're not getting sufficient equity. We're not getting a business valuation. Remember, just because it's a real estate loan, you're not making it based upon that piece of property. It's a small business loan. You need to get a valuation if there's an acquisition involved. And these are usually very high earning professionals. So we have issues on not getting all of the affiliate cash flow, and we're not obtaining all available collateral. This is what's going on in the industry. Oh, Joseph, when are we doing the polls? After this? Yeah, never. Okay. When I say it's a cash business, that's probably a poor term, but I'm saying we don't have receivables. That's what I'm implying. Revenues are projected to increase. That's the poll question. This was interesting. More and more states are adopting animal rights legislation, which could put a liability on your small business owner. So when I say there's geographic sensitivities, this one as well, you need to know what's happening if you're going to make a loan in California versus one in Texas. I'm not an expert on what they are, but you need to know that there could be more and more liability, i.e. civil fines. I don't know if they're going to go criminal, but that's going to be that. And pet insurance. More and more people are getting pet insurance, which is good for this sector.
Thank you for joining us today for the Coleman Report Update and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.